Approximately 24 hours after this week's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report warned the public of extreme global heating, 7 Democrats joined all Republicans to pass an amendment to block the government from banning fracking. In a recent Daily Poster piece, David Sirota and Andrew Perez write that, quote, the 7 Democratic lawmakers who backed the GOP amendment have raked in nearly $1.7 million from fossil fuel industry donors throughout their careers. Founder of the Daily Poster and editor-at-large at Jacobin, David Sirota, joins us now to discuss. David, welcome to Rising.
Thanks for having me.
So can you talk a little bit about these seven Democrats? Who were they, and what do you think their motivations were?
Well, look, let's be clear. This was the first really test vote on fossil fuel issues, direct fossil fuel issues, after the IPCC report. It's a non-binding amendment that essentially instructs the Budget Committee to add this provision into the budget. The Budget Committee doesn't have to do that. So let's just be clear that this is non-binding, but it is important because now every senator is on record about whether they support or do not support even allowing the government in the future at some point to ban fracking. The 7 Democrats who joined all of the Republicans included Colorado's John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennet, the 2 senators from New Mexico, Joe Manchin, Angus King in Maine. I'm probably missing, I think that's 6. I'm probably missing one of them. Oh, and John Tester from Montana. And their motivation is most likely to be on record saying that they're opposing a fracking ban in advance of their future election campaigns. This gives them a way to essentially signal to their oil and gas donors that, hey, we will vote to block the government from banning fracking. Again, a non-binding vote, but it's an important test case because it shows where the entire Senate really is after an IPCC report that specifically warned, by the way, about methane emissions that are linked to fracking.
So I want to ask you, David, and I think this is all very interesting analysis, but something else that happened yesterday, right after that IPCC report came out, is the Biden administration put out a statement through National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, basically calling on OPEC plus nations to drill more, to produce more crude oil. Many, I think, Republicans are pushing back and saying, listen, you didn't want us to do our own domestic production. You stopped the Keystone Pipeline, and now you're reverting to asking the Middle East to be producing more. How do you kind of reconcile these two things where we clearly have this report indicating an urgent need, but then you have a Democrat administration saying, yep, we need to be producing more right now?
Right. It's a total contradiction. I mean, either there's going to be a comprehensive strategy to reduce fossil fuel use, fossil fuel emissions in the United States and elsewhere, or the planet's going to burn. So the Biden administration is now caught in a situation where and to be clear, it has increased drilling on federal land. Let's not forget that for a second. The AP just had a report showing that the Biden administration has boosted fossil fuel drilling on federal land to levels not seen since the Bush administration. But the bottom line is that any domestic policy to reduce extraction of fossil fuels needs to also come with foreign international national security policies that do not simply backfill the reduced capacity in the United States with simply foreign oil, right? We're all on one giant spaceship here. If we don't deal with the life support system and fix the life support system on this spaceship, it doesn't matter where the oil is coming from. The planet is going to burn.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to a little bit there is that we've got, we're kind of offshoring our carbon footprint, right? And just saying, well, we don't want it here, we're going to reduce it, but then we're going to go ahead and give it to everybody else. And we've kind of had that, as we've gone year by year, we have been reducing our carbon footprint as a country, but we have been importing a lot of goods from other countries that are like China or like you said, going to the Middle East for some oil. But I want to go back to these 7 senators. So we know that they took a lot of money from the fossil fuel industry. Is that the only motivation there, or is it possible, just curious, that their states are somehow going to benefit from this sort of I mean, is this beneficial to their states at all to vote this way? Or is this
Well,
really just lobby money?
That's a great question. I mean, the states, New Mexico, Colorado, Montana, West Virginia, those are oil and gas states. They're states where the oil and gas industry argues that it is a huge part of the job base. Now, the actual amount of jobs that the oil and gas industry create in a place like where I'm coming from, Colorado, I'm out here in Denver, the amount of jobs are actually a pretty relatively small number of jobs as compared to the whole economy. But they definitely feel some sort of allegiance to the industry in their states. But of course, the contradiction is that the industry is causing all sorts of problems. I mean, I'm coming to you now from Denver, Colorado. We have a serious, severe ozone problem in the Denver-Julesburg Basin, which is basically the front range of the Rocky Mountains. The pollution gets caught there. We've had, in the last few days, some of the worst air quality in the whole world. Now, that's part of that is wildfire smoke mixed in with the ozone. But academic studies have shown that the ozone levels are fueled in part by fracking emissions. That is, the emissions that come from actually doing the fracking process. So you have a crazy situation where this is a blue state that has elected 2 Democratic senators. Constituents are being told to stay inside because the air quality is so bad. And our senators are back in Washington voting with Republicans. Our Democratic senators are voting with Republicans to prevent the government from banning fracking in the future. I mean, it really is, I mean, frankly, as somebody living here with a family here, it is absolutely appalling.
And David, the IPCC report from last week also connected for the first time directly human activity and severe weather events and also severe events like the wildfires in California that are causing a lot of the problems that you're talking about there in Colorado. So what's it going to take to get to a place where people say, okay, you know what? There are some jobs that are created by fracking in Colorado, but as a state, we're actually opposed to it because of the broader health problems and environmental problems that it's causing for us on a daily basis. Not some abstract thing that's off in the future, but an inability to keep your window open.
Right, and I think that we may be reaching a tipping point here, for instance, in Colorado. Just remember, only a few years ago, there was a ballot measure to restrict fracking, basically create distances that fracking could be in vis-a-vis population centers. That ballot measure was outspent 40 or 50 to 1 and still managed to get 43 or 44% of the vote in the election. So my point in saying that is that if a ballot measure a few years ago, before things had gotten even worse, to restrict fracking had gotten 44% in Colorado, it suggests there is a sizable part of the electorate willing to vote for restrictions, if not an outright ban. But the point is that until a ballot measure like that is passed, or until politicians like Michael Bennet or John Hickenlooper, who vote the way they did yesterday on fracking, until they face a voter backlash, we should expect those House members, senators, governmental leaders to continue trying to appease the fossil fuel industry. That is fundamentally the real problem. Until these politicians actually feel that there is a political cost to voting with the fossil fuel industry, then we should expect them to continue voting with that industry, and we should expect the planet, frankly, to continue facing this enormous crisis.
And David, I just want to push back or offer another perspective briefly, which you did allude to. These are major jobs creators within, these are, oil-rich states that were represented. So, of course, there was the lobby. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, that certain funding was given to these members. But, of course, I think they also have to give them credit that they're looking out for industry in their state and for the jobs that come with it. But we also can't lose in this broader discussion the whole concept of energy independence, and if that's something we even value anymore, the national security implications that come with that. So, I mean, my guess is, especially for the Democratic lawmakers that voted against this, it's the word ban, as opposed to what you were saying, which are perhaps certain restrictions. My question to you would be, is there an in-between here? Rather than saying across the board we are going to ban this, is there more of a discussion where you could say, let's look at restrictions that put us on a path path toward an all of the above approach to energy and push us toward renewables?
Well, my view is that at minimum, each level of government should be able to do what it sees fit on energy policy. We have a situation now where you've seen Republican legislators in states pass bills at the state level to ban communities in their state from restricting or banning fracking. I think that's wrong. I think that local communities should have the right to say we do or we do not want this toxic industrial process, inside of our jurisdiction. That is the essence of local control. States should be allowed to do that. The federal government, if it sees fit, if climate change is considered a true national security issue, the federal government should have the authority and power to restrict or ban fracking. And the point is that what we saw in that vote was designed to prevent the federal government, now or in the future, from even having the power to enact that kind of ban. So that's really, we're talking about an effort to essentially restrict the federal government's authority to do things that may need to be done in the future. And that truly is really the problem, because no matter where you necessarily are on what exact policy you want right now, if you're preemptively cutting off individual levels of government from even being able to ponder certain policies, what you're really trying to do is lock in the current status quo forever.
Well, David Sirota, great reporting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, David.
And we'll have more Rising for you right after this.